Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Show to Be with Mike G, the show of life, the show of John Carpenter, the show of Agave, the show of everything in between. Things are different now. It's been about 5 years since I started doing this show, and I really wanted to take the opportunity to do something just a little bit different. There was this concept in the FDR era, I believe, called the Fireside chats, where the president, he would sit down with the nation and talk about life. The nation's different. I don't want to talk about the president, but things are going to be difficult. And I wanted to invite some of my favorite people in the world to sit down and chat. And today, we're going to start with one of my favorite people where it didn't actually start out like that. It started a little bit tumultuous, if you will. I thought that he hated me. And then he found out I liked Hellraiser, and he looked at me. I think we're at a bar. We're going to talk about this moment. And he says, "Oh, now I know you're kinky." I don't know if that's true or not, but it was an interesting thing nonetheless. So I'm talking about Antonio Matta. You might know him from Shangri-La. You might know him up from Dallas. He's bartending up there as well. And a really good guy into metal, into agave, and into a lot of different things. For years now, honestly, I didn't know you're from San Francisco. You lived out there for a while, but the thing I wanted to really hone in on first, you were working at the hostel in Dallas. You made the effort to come back down to Austin so you could work down here full time, and all of a sudden it was a hurry up and wait situation. So how are you feeling about the fact that you moved, you were gone 2-3 days a week to work up in Dallas, and then you come back and everything is at a halt?
Sure. I mean, I went up there. I was always meant to be a temporary situation with Dallas. It was just kind of consulting to kind of wrangle in some of the loose ends there, and then pass it off to someone I could trust, which I did with my friend Brandon Lurkhart. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I came back down here, and my big thing was I was working towards making a move away from being behind the bar, and had gone through several interviews with a couple different companies, and then everything got put onto a hiring freeze for pretty much everybody across the board, which I understand. So that more than anything else was incredibly frustrating to feel like maybe I had kind of gotten to a point where I was able to move myself forward in what was becoming more and more clear to me, the direction that I needed to be going in. So that was a little frustrating. And I mean, to be fair, I really don't. I love Shangri-La, and I love working there. The owners are really cool people. My coworkers are great. We have a cool bar family, so it's cool to at least have that. That's what I get to do. So no complaints there. Obviously, with our current predicament, they acted as fast as they could. They decided to close down our bar family, so Shangri-La, Liberty, and Grackle, so that they could file all the paperwork with the state immediately, so that when any of us applied, there's no contest, the state doesn't have to have any questions. They literally look at our stuff, go, okay, cool, yes, they said you've been laid off, and get us through as fast as possible. So that's, again, one of those things I like about them a lot.
I think that's a really interesting move, and I think it speaks a lot about a company that cares about its folks, right? So they see potentially there's going to be this massive layoffs. There's going to be potentially something that keeps them out of business for a quarter or more, and they're like, you know what? We actually really care about y'all. We're going to get ahead of this and make sure that you guys are covered, because apparently yesterday, right, there were over 1 million calls into the unemployment line, because it's roughly the first of the month. So just for you, and you don't have to divulge whether or not you're on unemployment or not, that's not really important, but are you feeling it with your friends? Or just people are kind of there's the pressure, there's the tension?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as much as it's funny, it's most communications obviously via text message, or people hop on a FaceTime, or Facebook chat or a house party, whatever it is. And a lot of the first questions that people ask is, how are you doing? How are you holding up? Which, I mean, I get it. It's a lot of stress for a lot of people. I personally kind of been taking the approach of I can only be so freaked out about the things that I can't control.
Right. Yeah.
So for me, it's been about focusing on daily life, just trying to do those basic, routines for myself. So like, no, I don't shower every day, but I have showered almost every day, and like being bothered to like shave and trim and, put on pants and, try and leave the house as much as humanly possible. Because those are within my control,
For sure. Do you find that, so I have structure. I hate to say it, but for lack of a better term, I have like a 9 to 5, right? Now, I was going out and stuff, but do you find that bartender schedule is carried over and you're waking up, even though you could wake up at 8? Because I texted you the other day and you were up at like 8:30. I was like, well done, 8:30. I didn't think you could be up. But is that carried over, that kind of schedule, that, that the routine itself?
Not as much. The first couple of days were a little screwy for sure. Mind and body were definitely freaked out more than they are now.
Yeah.
Not as clear as to what was happening, and I think was more prone to substance abuse in that juncture. Just drink a lot, and
sure.
It was like that would throw off my sleep schedule. But since then, I've kind of stabilized more. Like I said, just doing those things for yourself to just be more mentally and physically healthy, to help kind of diminish some of the effects of the stress that might otherwise drag us down a bit more. So I have been turning in earlier. It's almost as if without, the structure of a job telling me when to wake up and go to sleep, I'm almost more back to a more caveman era of like what it is that, the sun dictates when we are awake and when we're asleep,
You're not lighting a fire in the living room, are you? Just like grabbing wood and twigs out of the front and just kind of putting them in the lawn. You aren't trying to discover the wheel or anything. You're talking not that kind of stuff, right?
I mean, the fires in the living room are more for roasting goats in our satanic rituals.
Now that's on brand, Antonio. That's a very on brand statement.
Absolutely. Roasting goats, baby. Speaking of, I'm going to go ahead and catch up right now. I'm going to do a little shot of this guy right here.
Ah, there goes Cimarron.
Yeah. I'm going to start off with just simple, delicious, well-made tequila.
Well, I guess because this is partially exhibitionism, this mezcal from Emilia, which I think you've got a bottle of Mezonte back there too that you're going to sip. But Madurado en Vidro, so this has been in glass for some time. But you know what? Here's the thing. So I've been at a crossroads. It's been dichotomous for me, right? Because I want to still make us all feel connected, but physically we can't be near each other. Now, this is something that's very strange because out of the times I see you in a month, I probably text you 10 times more than that. But I always take for granted, I just expect that I'm going to run into you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a different kind of thing. And so now we have to make time to kind of be together. And so because we're here together, this Instagram Live, and then this episode will go on tomorrow, I wanted to focus on different stuff, right? I'm always talking about the industry, and that's fine. But lots of people are hurting. So I wanted to talk about stuff like getting drunk, I want to talk about stuff like horror movies, music. And so so in other words, everybody that's tuned in right now, if you don't want to hear about horror movies or things that scared us shitless as a kid, you might want to stop off. But also, I saw there's a couple of Andres from Sombras on, there's going to be some talk of some metal too. So we'll try to entice you both ways to stay tuned. But so here's the thing. When I first met you, and I mentioned this kind of before you hopped on, but this is all different now, mind you. This is a different thing. I thought you were gruff. I thought you were unapproachable, not warm, And that all quickly faded once we started talking about horror movies for some reason. So, and I seldom do this, but what did you think of me when you met me? Because obviously we were at odds with each other.
I don't particularly feel that way about you. I mean, I know that like I can, my moods vary. I said I was like a consistently this way kind of person all the time, I would be lying. I definitely have my more gruff days, I have my kind of rougher edges and I have my smoother side too. So like kind of depending on the day, unfortunately. But that said, my memories of you were always, it was usually you were usually around Charles, so it was like the two of you kind of, I enjoyed listening to you guys talk about your passion for your spirits. And, I was always, interested in hearing what you guys had to say in that regard, because that's, kind of what I think the easy point of relation for anybody. That bridge is automatically built in within our industry.
Sure.
As far as like personal relationships went, obviously, yeah, you're right. It didn't get much further along until, we really started getting into the personal things behind that front that we usually share with each other. Again, that bridge of booze and bars and those kind of things that it's easy, like it doesn't matter who you are. We can sit here and talk about bars all day, but until you get into what somebody's about, what drives them more in their day to day, what were they like before they even got into the bar industry, those are the things that, that's where you make your really, really strong friendships. I'm not saying that, I'm not homies with the people that I know from the bar world, but getting to those other layers of them that are not bar related. For me, having grown up a musician, music is obviously, a huge thing. Obviously, I'm a metalhead, but like I love hip hop a lot. And, that was something that drew Rashid and myself together a lot. And it's something that Anoop and I talk about a lot,
Sure. Do you have, because we could say that metal makes sense, but who is the saccharine, sugary pop artist that you're like, I kind of really like it?
Not that I followed it down a hole well enough to really know much in the way of songs. And actually, the thing that made me pay attention to him was the band Dillinger Escape Plan did a cover. But Dillinger... That's
a roundabout way to like get to...
It's like making an excuse for it. No, but I mean, I would say that Justin Timberlake.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, he writes his own music, he plays his own instruments. The dude's got talent, and like it or not, he's charismatic and he's funny, and his sketches on SNL made me kind of look at him and go, okay, like there's more to this than just some sort of pop star. But like and again, that was definitely Dillinger Escape Plan did a cover of The Way You Do, which is it's like a verbatim cover too.
You realize like this is a puzzle. I can't even imagine. I don't even understand how Dillinger Escape Plan could articulate Justin Timberlake. But you know what? Did it make it easier because they introduced you to him, or would you come around? It's not, no pun intended. Come around. But would if someone else had mentioned it, would you have actually stumbled upon Justin Timberlake, or took metal to like somehow affirm it?
Okay, actually, so funny. I am from back in when I kind of went to college. Friends with these guys. Barely anybody's in the band anymore, but they're in a metal band called Devil Driver, and homies with them for years. And I toured with them in Europe. I just happened to be kind of around, so I hopped on the bus and ended up doing merch because they bandmate got sent home because of the drug out of mess and all this stuff. So I ended up on tour with them a bunch, and it's really funny. We'd be like in the green room or on the bus or whatever, and hanging out, and like they did listen to as much metal as like hanging out as I thought they would. So like legitimately, I put on Opeth one day in the green room, and they play a song like, oh yeah, man, that's a great track, but let me take pass the mic or whatever, and my buddy puts on Britney Spears and received the top of my ear off about how Britney Spears is this genius, and I was like, okay. Not what I expected to see out of, my dudes are in this like heavy ass, just, basically like kind of modern death metal band. I was like, all right, guys, sure. But, in that sense, that all those things, those are the dynamics that build into somebody and give them more creative ability and reach to be able to like write more stuff than just, just this one genre of music. So I actually don't know the answer to this. I'd have to guess, which kind of makes me sad a little bit. But what do you play again? I grew up playing guitar most of my life.
Okay.
Started with the violin, and when I was really, really young, and then switched over to guitar about 7th grade, and started playing in bands at high school. Most of which were absolutely god awful. And if anybody, I don't think anybody's on here watching that, but if you heard one of my bands in high school, I'm really sorry. And then I went to college in Santa Barbara, and I met a bunch of folks, started playing in bands there. Moved back to San Francisco, played in bands there. And somewhere along the line in SF, I started playing bass with the band that I was with for a long time called Form and Fate. And I really enjoyed the challenge of the bass. It took my drummer, Russ, who's a really good friend of mine, to sit me down and be like, hey, you need to not play to the guitars as much, like listen to the melody of that, but listen to what I'm doing, or you think about the options of how the bass can change the entire vibe or feel of a song against what the guitars were doing. And that, when I kind of clicked in with that thought process, it got a lot more interesting for me. I think that became this new way of looking at how I wrote and played music that expanded me a lot. So I play both now.
When's the last time you picked up the bass? Oh, good. So you tracking it all? I mean, so here's a question. So I tuned my piano, restrung the guitars, fixed the input on my one hollow body, whatever. Like, I'm getting real productive. Are you finding yourself drawn to music more now that you have, and I have, nothing but time on our hands?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I it's kind of funny. I stopped playing music when I moved to Austin. I didn't move to Austin to get into the music scene. I thought figure I'd fall in with some of the more metal bands, but I didn't find those until recently. So I came to work on the bar industry career thing because I kind of saw a lot of opportunity. And this is when I moved here 8 years ago. So my guitars all sat around, and I just would pick them up occasionally and noodle around and really not do much. But since this has all started, I have restrung both of my guitars, got out my Line 6 pedal board so I can play with like my headphones in.
Line 6? I knew it. I knew you had Line 6. Either a bass pod or a guitar pod or something.
Sir. That was an option for me to be able to play at home, living in a flat with other people in San Francisco. I mean, I've got a bunch of tube amps and all that stuff. So, I definitely much prefer the analog sounds.
Sure. So can I ask you then? Because I can keep this light. The whole time before we started to do this, I said, should I go that serious Dan Rather, Terry Gross route, or should I go Howard Stern? And so I'm going to go more Howard Stern for the levity element here for everybody. Are you softening in your old age? Because I suspect you are. It gets tough. Yeah, it does. I give a fuck, but like I realize that I'm a troublemaker. That's that's one of the things I realized. We've been doing these mezcal happy hours on Mondays. I'm not talking shit, but like I just wanted to rile people up a little bit. Be like, what do you guys think about this? And so for some reason, I'm getting more like that, and I don't know why. Maybe I couldn't act out on it as a mid 30-year-old. I'm not exactly sure. But something, and actually Benitez joined. This is great. I'm glad that he's here. Same with Josh Hendricks. There's some pros that have hopped on here. Anoop's on here. Prasado's on here. I mean, if we're all drinking, you guys, if you're sipping something, as well as Simon just joined. If you guys are sipping something, post it. We'll talk about it. And Tony and I, we coordinated which mezcal to drink if it gave you any question of how exactly. So I'm going to go one more chapter, then we'll go to Agave. But I remember seeing Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the first time in 97, I think. And I was in Texas. I was in Katy, Texas, for any of you out there listening that have been to Katy, Texas. At the time in the 90s, pretty much a bunch of goat fuckers. Now, why I say that is because in the student manual, I came from the Midwest, or rather I came from the Southwest, and I came and I read the manual in 1997 for Katy High School, and it was like, hey, I'm paraphrasing, don't fraternize with the farm stock, please. That was actually in the handbook. So I was scared shitless the first time I saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It was like a real threat potentially, right? And that was the movie that first made me, well, now there's stuff before that I was watching horror movies, but that one is when I kept my windows closed and looked over my shoulder when I was riding home. So you and I have this massive predilection towards horror movies. What is it for you? What was that movie you're like, oh fuck, I feel uneasy? I don't know why, but I certainly don't feel good.
I think the pinnacle horror film for me that made me really look at the genre was Return of the Living Dead. Which is funny.
Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah. Which is funny because it's kind of a parody on the genre.
Yeah.
But kind of. It is 100% a very tongue-in-cheek take on the genre of zombie movies in general, and horror as a whole thing. I grew up on a street that was like a half circle in a town called Mill Valley in the Bay Area, and there was the cool dad on the block, Steve, who would let us all crash to the house, and Steve just let us do whatever we want, He wasn't not we're not running around playing with spears or something stupid like that, but let us.
Sure.
He put up
Not Lord of the Flies. By no means was it Lord of the Flies.
Right, yeah. But he was definitely he was the cool dad who let us watch a bunch of horror movies, and so I got to see a lot of things, and some of which I remember, some of them if you played them for me, I know I would catch it in a second and be like, oh my god, that was that movie. But it was Return of the Living Dead that got me. They got me freaked out and being like, there's a cemetery pretty close by. What if, Dude,
that's the one with Linnea Quigley, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know she had, because, all right, so I can go there. No one's going to shut us off. I believe because she curated her genitalia so tightly, I'll put it that way, womanscaped it, if you will, she had to wear, do you know this? She had to wear a vaginal implant on top because she was pretty much nude for 20 minutes of the movie or whatever.
Yeah,
did you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that it was a prosthetic vagina
in Return of the Living Dead.
Isn't that crazy?
That is hilarious.
Yeah, stupid knowledge that I may or may not have.
Cool. I appreciate knowing that now. Yeah, because it's funny. That was definitely one of those interesting early introductions to foreshadowing for me.
Yeah.
She talks about when they're all hanging out in the graveyard, and she talks about she's getting naked, and she's like, my worst fear is being surrounded by a bunch of old men and having them eat me and take me apart, and that's how she ends up. That was again
foreshadowing.
Yeah,
what a bitch. Yeah. Seriously, it'll get you every time. It gets you every time.
Brutal.
So.
Okay, going to more recent, even though it may be in a movie that's older, but something you've seen recently, anything kind of move you or make you think about the genre differently?
I think it's interesting seeing how you've had different kinds of emotions with horror. So,
yeah,
you had the kind of era in which someone like Eli Roth came out with Hostel, and that was a huge impact and pushed a lot of horror in the direction of what people called torture porn. Mm-hmm. It's less of a chance to run away from a slasher, for example, or a psycho killer, and more just this thing where it's you're gonna get tied to a chair and have your teeth pulled out and your knees smashed with a sledgehammer and all these
tough,
horrific things. A
little more grueling, I would say.
Right.
Getting your fingernails pulled out. I'd rather be stabbed in the gut, frankly.
Yeah. It was that Japanese flick Audition. That's just
oof.
Yeah. It's having a lot of horror movies use the slasher things, which I was raised on. That was my favorite genre for sure. There's a sort of a comical aspect to a lot of it.
Yeah.
And then with a lot of modern horror, some of the torture stuff, like I said, that makes you kind of a little squeamish, kind of cringe, make you want to look away a little bit. And also then you throw in Saw, or where there's a creative aspect to it. So Saw or Final Destination, whereas there's huge, it's I'm brain farting. What is the name of the thing where the contraption you set up one thing and it sets up another thing to set up another
the mousetrap thing?
Sure. Yes. Yeah. Oversimplify. Yeah. Those kind of creative.
Are you saying I oversimplified it? Is that what you just said? I oversimplified a whole genre?
I meant the actual term because there's an actual word for it. It's the name of a person.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah. I'm brain farting that.
I do want you.
I want to. This is funny because we got Andy Maurer. You know, he's in California. He moved. He's Texan. Got a lot of great people on the line. We're going to talk about agave next. But for those of you that are here, that you are Liz Forsythe Destroying, that are here listening along, hanging out, can you share a horror movie that really made you feel uneasy? Now, if you don't watch that, that's fine. Bombshell, I saw that recently. That's pretty unnerving. So there are other kinds of flicks like that. But share that with us, and we'll cover some of this stuff along, and I will try to conduct through this conversation with your interaction, which is good. So you pulled out a bottle of Mazonte.
Yeah.
And I just talked to Pedro. I hope to have him on Instagram Live as well, which would be great. So let's take a sip of mezcal, one of the things that we also bonded on after the horror movie. So tell me which bottle you picked there.
Sorry, I'm looking at people's choices here. These are some great
Killer Clowns.
Oh yeah, Bone Tomahawk,
Dude.
man.
Bone Tomahawk.
Oof.
Oof. Spoiler alert, getting cut in the groin. And
Yeah,
that was...
The noises that it made, man. That was, oh god. Like you could cover your eyes, but you still had to hear it, you know?
Oh my gosh. Andy, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, I get you. That tone's real strange. That movie's got a real strange
tone.
Yeah.
Children of the Corn. Josh, I'd actually never seen Children of the Corn. I know it's adapted from a Stephen King book. Martyrs, I still haven't seen. I couldn't get a good stream because there's a dubbed version.
It's a French movie. I wouldn't dare watch the dubbed version. Eraserhead from Under.
Martyrs is pretty gnarly. There's some
pretty rough,
cringeworthy stuff in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly because it's in French, and that's pretty cringeworthy.
Yeah, the French are terrible.
Children. Ugh, gross.
So
Right.
Francisco Terrazas too just joined, which is great. We're now starting to talk about agave. So again, if you were super stoked on horror, we're going to shift yet again here and share this beautiful bottle. What you got there, Antonio?
All right, so this is from my first trip down to Guadalajara in 2000. I think it was 18. I went down there. Went to Mazonte and did the whole thing with Pedro. He walked me through a bunch of different stuff, and so this is by Emilio Vieira. With Agave Alto, which is
Iniquitans, right?
Pardon?
Iniquitans. It's like a really low yielding agave. They grow pretty big, and from what I understand, they make pulque out of it.
Okay. This guy was a 300-liter batch, which you're saying that's a small yield plant. 300 liters. It's a pretty decent amount already.
Yeah, it is.
This is from 2017. Super cool. Like I said, I went down and I was just going to Guadalajara to go check it out. And my friend suggested I go hang out with Pedro, meet him, and do that whole thing. And he showed me so many cool things. The photos that he has of these different means of distillation that people have been doing for a long time that are, I don't want to call it primitive because that's kind of diminutive, but like it's very, very, it's just so of the earth that how they pull things together using like tree trunks and wooden bowls. It's crazy. So yeah, it was really cool to have that experience, and the way that he talks about it, obviously his passion level is definitely something else. So
yeah, he's one of the kindest, most intelligent, most down to earth guys I've ever met, and he's probably, I would feel like he's one of the best conduits into agave that anybody could. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you had a guy that's like gonna shake your hand and bring you into an open house for, I don't know, a condo or something, like Pedro is like the best guy for that. But so going back to your journey with agave, I won't talk about the brand, but there's a gig that you're hoping to maybe get here in Texas, which would be a great opportunity for you. But what was something, or was it Mazonte that you experienced with agave and you're like, oh shit, I really need to look into this. I need to taste more. I need to experience more.
My first, I'd say my first like real would have been with, I definitely tried a couple tequilas that I really dug. Los Chamucos was definitely one of them, but it was, I was working at Bar Agricole in San Francisco, and I knew absolutely fucking nothing about what I was doing there. I was a barista long before, and for a long time before I ended up behind the bar. And I was working there. Somebody got promoted from bar back to bartender. I kind of didn't want to take the bar back position, but their ultimatum was basically, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah.
AKA take the job or get the fuck out of the way, because it's obviously that place, that position in a beverage situation for them is obviously a means to get behind the bar at Agricole, which is great, an incredible program with a lot of knowledge there. But my personal mentor there was this guy, Craig Lane, who I occasionally communicate with. I'll send him a text and I'll get a response back from him like 6 months later, because he just is. He's a very, very analog human. He does not like the digital world by any means whatsoever.
Text what? What messages? What?
Yeah. I don't know. It's all just call me on the rotary. Call me on the rotary phone. It's fine.
You got a pigeon, right? Just send it my way.
Yeah. But no, he poured me a chichicapa, and that, I'd never even heard of mezcal. I was, we were working at the end of the night, cleaning everything up, and I was putting some bottles up, and he asked me, what, and I asked him a question, but I was like, oh, what is this green bottle here? I have no clue. And he was like, oh yeah, it's mezcal. And, got a decent little look at it. And, he kind of touched on what it was and gave me a pour, and I was intrigued by the flavors and the tastes, because at that point with Agricole, I had already gotten my introduction to Agricole rums, obviously, which the weird variety of flavors that come through in Agricole's definitely caught my palate. And I thought that was a good primer for getting me into mezcal, because they both have that like super green vegetal.
In the same neighborhood, different houses, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And it's great too. The fact that we're kind of in a different era right now, temporarily. A lot of folks saying things are going to change and all of that. But so I'm happy to see Patrick Ruby joined on. His provocative posts of Daisy Dukes. That's what keeps me afloat some nights. Aaron Ashford from Old May just joined too. Everybody's here and we're kind of rallying together. So kind of I got a couple more questions for you, but taking this time off, we'll call it, some people call it being furloughed. There's another term for it too, where you kind of go on a break and you just kind of figure stuff out. Sabbatical, thank you. So this is a forced sabbatical. And tell me two things that either you have done or that you want to do in terms of new skills or new schemes that you want to acquire as you've got all this time off.
I have decided I really want to learn how to maintain bikes. I got this bicycle from a friend of mine for very, very cheap, and it's in great shape, but it needs a little bit of work, and I had to do a couple different things with that one, and same with Aubrey's bike too. So I figure, I like working with my hands, which is a big part of being a bartender that I really miss. I'm sitting here, you guys can't see it, but I'm fidgeting with my hands because I don't know how to not. So something to occupy my hand that has like a really, really a physical aspect to it that's not just, typing on a keyboard, because that only does so much,
Sure.
So, yeah, really
so you got it. Okay.
Fixing bikes, that's great. I learned how to solder just to offer one up, which is crazy. I never thought I would, and I burned myself, but that's to be expected, I think.
Sure.
What else? Another skill, maybe you're not there yet, but what's something else on your roadmap you'd love to learn how to do?
Man. It's funny. It's like, with all of this scenario, trying not to make it like a New Year's resolution.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to do this. Because I know that you try and set up too many things and I don't want to put too much pressure on where there's already a lot of pressure. There's just an invisible pressure that we're all feeling right now, So I feel that adding it by saying, I definitely want to do this, feels like a bit much. So the bicycle thing was something I decided I definitely want to know how to do. Would like to relearn how to manage and maintain my guitars better, because I used to do all my own work on my guitars, and I seem to have forgotten how that works. So I have mine up yesterday. I was like, what in the hell is this stuff?
There's a spare wire. Why is there a spare wire sticking out of my guitar?
Yeah.
YouTube has been exceptionally helpful, I think, during these times.
100%.
So,
No, please. Yeah, good.
It's kind of the main part of it all.
So I got a couple questions left. We got Chris Dempsey from Mescal Vago, Sampson, Surrey, that just joined Pam as well. Pam Wisnesser. I mean, this is good. I feel very honored to have such a really wide swath of folks join us to hear about these random things. And so you're going to drink a rum agricole. Is that right? That's what you're going to do right now?
Correct. I'm going to drink a Neeson. Bit of the old Neeson, which is also, I think, the second agricole rum I ever had, if not the first. They have the Élevé sous bois, which is, I never thought of, at that time, again, at agricole, I never thought about the idea of having a really good barrel aged rum, but turns out, with what Neeson has done, I mean, this is just incredible. I don't want to mix this with anything,
Yeah, it's incredible.
There's a question out here, from the audience saying, "Hey, what's going down, y'all? Miss all of your faces." There's no way anyone missed my face. They hardly ever saw it. Now, you, on the other hand, how do you feel? We think, I've flipped this question a little bit. We always think about seeing other people, right? Like, I'm going to go out, I'm going to be social, I'm going to have a little moment, finally unwind or whatnot, because that refills me personally. That's why this is actually really helpful to me. But do you ever think about being seen versus going to see people? Do you think about the fact that you go out and people want to see you?
I mean, I am kind of a Paris Hilton like that.
I thought so. That's right. Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, it's kind of part of the thing with being a bartender, especially at a place like Shang or whatever. I mean, like, where we have such a heavy crowd of regulars, and I had a friend of mine ask me a while back, on one of my Facebook posts about working a shift. He was like, "Can you actually quantify any sort of a metric to explain why you're always posting this garbage?" And I was like, "Actually, I fucking can, dude." Because realistically, man, like, especially in a town like Austin, man, holy crap, we're like, pick a place, man, where there's so many options of places to go to. Like, what makes you decide you want to go to a place? Like, I know that, like, for example, I very rarely straight up crave a cocktail. When I do, it's usually a martini. Okay. And so my brain is hardwired to, I want a martini from Small Victory. That's my place. That's where I go for a martini.
Laura was on here earlier. I don't know if she still is, but I feel you. That's where I would go. I've never had an affair, Antonio. But if I was gonna have an affair, I would go to that bar.
Sure. I mean, it's dark and swanky, and it's got all the sex vibes going on.
It does.
But no, I mean, if I want a martini, that's like my vibe, and if you're looking for, each bar unto itself as an entity has its own appeal.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times, that appeal is based on who is behind the bar. What kind of, because, you help curate the vibe in that space. You kind of direct people into each other, or you're interacting with people in a certain manner that creates, this atmosphere that people want to be a part of. So in the sense of, like, thinking about being seen, in that particular verbiage, no, but like in the sense of, I am aware that I am the face of this establishment at this time when I am, at the helm. So that's absolutely, and
I think that's an important thing to note. Because I'm behind the scenes in a lot of ways, so it's a little bit different for me. But that energy, you miss the energy. Does it refill you?
It does both. I think, to oversimplify it down to certain terms, I would say that I am an extroverted introvert.
Mm-hmm.
When I run out of gas, man, it's happened to me during shifts, and it's just the worst, because then I'm just like running, not even on fumes, but I'm like, my body and my brain are trying to recoil from the general public, and you're like, hey, you still have 2 hours of this, so you better buck up. But in a way, yeah, it does. This has been an interesting experience of being, like, having that whole synergy removed from my life completely. I do specifically use the word synergy because it is that thing between myself and my customers and our exchanges and the space that I'm in, being behind, like, the bar at Shangri-La, for example, in particular, the way it's that kind of roundabout, it does create a very certain energy that you put into certain directions. And to me, that is a valuable experience, and I really enjoy it. So yeah, there's all of those components that go together, but having that taken out of my life and seeing how that's kind of affected me, and like realizing, yeah, I absolutely miss bartending. But again, as I also said, I'm kind of pushing away from that a little bit. So I've also found that by busying myself with a lot of other mental activities, it's been kind of like, okay, what if this isn't a part of my life anymore? How do I deal with it with my extra time that I'm not up at late hours all the time for, the purpose of being at work? How do I deal with all of that? And is it okay with me? And I think that that's something that I'm actually kind of okay with now. So,
yeah. Well, I got 3 questions left for you. And Catherine Sikora of the Scotch Lovers Group in Austin. It's great to have you hopping on with us too. She's been a really wonderful supporter of the show. The fact that I have to say the show makes me feel a little strange, but not Jimmy Fallon like. At least I haven't gone that far. Thank God. But inspiration, right? This is something that is so often sought and so often achieved from an external place. For me, sometimes movies inspire me, sometimes music does, but more often than not, it's people. So knowing that all of us together are finding it difficult to find external sources of inspiration, how do you stay motivated? How do you stay focused on what might be next, what you want to achieve next?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think that begs the question of how much are we pursuing these goals based on something about our peer group versus some sort of an internal Kurt Cobain, huh? All right. Weird Kurt Cobain.
No, Cobain. So if you cut your hair, you'll have bangs.
Got it. Very clever.
I think that's pretty good. Or yeah. Kurt Cobain, where you wield a gun all the time. Either way, these are great options.
More Kurt Cobain for your buck. I think how much of what you're doing is seeking appeal to your peer group versus how much is something that deeply drives and motivates you to get out there and do those things. And for, I guess on my end, it's kind of like, I think the process of growing through your own bar career, and everyone has their own journey and their own path on this. That I remember getting into this part earlier, and I just wanted so badly to make cocktails for everybody, and I wanted everybody to ask me to challenge myself and to always push my boundaries. And then after a while, it kind of just stopped. And it took a while. It took working at a place like Jackalope and Firehousing, this kind of realizing I didn't actually give a shit. Like I didn't feel like I needed to prove anything. I didn't care. I was like, what the fuck do you want to drink, man? Let me make you the drink, whatever you want. Like, I'll happily do that. So then it became more about my time spent transacting with my guests than it did the actual drink that they want,
Right.
So in that sense, I feel like that sense of external motivation is kind of a moot point, because it's not about being challenged from an external point of view anymore. It's much more about myself. It's like making myself be more disciplined about sitting down and going through the whole Bar Smarts program. Since Pernod Ricard has offered that up as a free resource that we can all use. Just making myself do that, and that has nothing to do with anybody else. That's just myself, and it's the challenge of making myself sit still in this chair that I'm sitting in right now, and be on my laptop and read and take notes and be thorough and meticulous and not skim. And again, that's just all internal motivation about like improving myself for myself.
Yeah. Understood. And I think it's a great point, and it's a great opportunity for any of us to learn something new, to do something different, to talk about things in a different way. And I'm excited to see what stems from that, what we create in this period. The Renaissance came from a particular time and place, and potentially we'll see that coming after all of this stuff. So the last 2 questions for you. The first of the 2 is, I know that you're living with your girlfriend or your partner. I prefer partner, frankly. How has that been? Close proximity, easier to cause friction. As you know, as a caveman starting fires in the living room, all you do is rub 2 sticks together and apparently get a spark. So how are things going?
After that, yes.
That's right.
I mean, to her credit as a human, Aubrey's a pretty easygoing person. She is, she just is willing to let a lot of shit be, which is something that I try to take away from being with her. You know, there's obviously challenges to it. I mean, you know, it's like having your moods and cycles be on and off, like having somebody be like, we've had our days where this whole situation got the best of us. Sure. And like she had a crash day and I was like motivated and wanted to do things. And that was challenging for me because I kind of wanted to help pick her up. But like at the same time, I could tell it was just going to be a thing that took time and kind of vice versa. And realistically, I would think that that's kind of a pretty idyllic situation for, you know, to have with your partner, that they can respect each other's space in that sense, but also try and lift each other up, but read it when the person needs space. Yeah. We eat pretty much every meal together, which I've always felt that was something that lacked in our life, as both working in the service industry, with her working in restaurants. She has different hours than I do. So it's kind of nice. It's kind of a privilege that we get to share this many meals. Because that's a huge social aspect for human beings in general.
Sure. It's one of the last vestiges of culture in which you have to be there in person, right? So
yeah, and
you can watch a movie on your phone, listen to music, but you certainly cannot have dinner on your phone.
Yeah, and you know, to double down and get a little more real on it, like she and I definitely hit like a weird juncture where there was some other shit that had been kind of backed up in our personal lives that we hadn't wanted to or been able to talk about, and because it kind of came to a head because of our proximity, it forced the issue, you know. And there was a day of I just checked it back here and shut off communication, and the next day it was like, hey, let's talk about this, you know. And I think that's kind of a benefit of this whole scenario. Like if we're both running around our daily lives, we may not have ever addressed that, you know. Sure,
you might have just let it washed on by, which I think is a really interesting thing, to address things head on. I gotta say real quick, because I'm on camera, like I got an itch on my nose, but I'm not supposed to touch my face, right? So I'm gonna go like this with the veladora. That helped. That was good. That was definitely good. So Antonio, the last question for you: if all this didn't happen and you weren't a bartender, what would be the occupation? What would be the job that you'd want if you had never entered this industry?
Ideal job.
The ideal job?
Yeah.
Man.
Megan Sparks just joined while you're thinking. I'm going to buy you some time here, Antonio. Thank you
for I'm thinking about all the people who are watching and what I imagine their answers would be. I mean, you know, the thing that I set out to be when I was in my 20s was to be a rock star, you know?
Yeah.
It was funny. I never met younger, more naive me definitely wanted like the big spotlight. But then I think about the higher up in the lower level bands. So bands that have full careers out of making music. Somebody like Mogwai, who I think make incredible music, and they have so many different avenues by which they do that, and they achieve that, but they can be relatively unknown. They can go to a pub and nobody's going to call them out for it. They're not getting mobbed constantly. That was kind of where I wanted to be ideally, in that land. That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a rock star, you know.
It's like being Mick Mars. No one knows Mick Mars.
Yeah, because that dude was ugly.
But he's the soul.
It was brutal, man. The dude was just a weird-looking motherfucker. He looked like an alien, and like,
yeah.
I personally think I love his face. I think he's so interesting looking, and you know, he's also also the creative force behind that band. Without
man, but he can go to HEB
if he wanted. Not he's in LA probably, but he could go to HEB and no one give him shit.
Yeah, 100%.
Not a bad place to be.
Yeah. All the money, all the success, all the fame, and everything else goes along with it, and none of the daily hassle of it, you know.
Having the cake and eating it too. Well, it's been a pleasure getting to sit down in this time, in this strange time.
And
for sure.
Some agave with you. What you got?
I interject one thing real quick too.
Of course.
Since I do think it's there have been a lot of shifts in how these things, how everything operates. You've got a lot of places that serve food that are struggling, but they're doing to-go orders and things of that sort for people. Mm-hmm. And, you've got all these brands that had these budgets set aside, and obviously their allocated money has, they've had to shrink those budgets because their income's obviously drastically dwindled. Off-premise sales have skyrocketed. Right. But it's cool to see what a lot of them have done. I can name a few. I know that Anna from Ricard has definitely reached out a few times. Rashida's hooked some people up, and with Beam Centauri, and you've got some other brands that what they've been doing is they've been buying people in the service industry who are now out of work. They've been buying people meals, and so what they do is they call up these places and they go, "Hey, here's my credit card. I'm going to do this amount of order," and you go and you pick up. And so it's cool because it's nice for them. It's nice that they're able to help feed those of us who are out of work right now, who don't know where our next paycheck's coming from, don't know where our next meal's coming from. And it's also great because they are helping to put their money into those places that they would be doing so through whatever they're doing this, because they're doing this with their accounts, obviously. And a lot of places, we went and picked up a bunch of groceries from Olive and June the other day. Cavalier was giving away some free meals the other day, so we went down there and got some food, and and I think that's really, really cool. I've been sitting here sipping on an Austin East Cider because until I think it's the 5th of this month, they're giving away a 6-pack to anybody who works in the service industry, and I think it's really cool to see things like that where you have these companies that they're in binds too. Card has a lot of money, but they took a hit. They did. They absolutely did. Not having the on-premise aspect of people making cocktails with their beverages and selling their stuff, that's hard. And they're still, they've donated money towards, these companies have donated money towards USBG scholarship funds and that sort of thing. But it's also great the way that they can do this by putting money into their accounts to help try to keep them alive through this really, really difficult time. And I think it's
absolutely, man,
really praiseworthy. And I appreciate all those brands for doing that for all of us.
We're all adapting. We're all trying to connect, and even Liz Forsyth killing a bottle of Mezonte 2018. So that's good, with us, and we bringing everyone together. All I could say is, thanks so much for taking the time out. Obviously, we'll reconnect in a more interpersonal way once everything kind of washes over. But I think that people need this. I don't know. I don't want to be presumptuous about what people need. But you and I talking, shooting the shit, drinking mezcal, I think that that's vastly important right now. And it's the only thing I really know how to do. Is talk and ask questions. So that's where it's going to go. So, Antonio, thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you soon, man.
Good to chat with you face to face, I guess.
Yeah. Well, face
on face, because I'm on top of you.
Oh,
is that weird?
Yeah. Put your face on my face. Yeah.
Weird. Thanks, man.
Have a good night.
See you, bud.
I'll talk to you.
So thanks everybody for watching and listening to Show to V with Mike G. It's great sitting and chatting with Antonio. Lots of things we learned about each other. Lots of things that I didn't realize about him. And I'm sure a longer, more in-depth episode about his life is probably due. Thank you so much, people that have hopped on. Simon, Anna, Liz, so many people in this very, very close community. So it's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you soon. So no matter if you're watching Community because it just dropped on Netflix, if you're thinking, I'm not really sure what the next movie I might see in the theater is, please keep